Well, good afternoon, viewers. Today we have a 2014 Ram. We're continuing some work on this thing. We're doing an oil pan. It's rusted out. So I've already removed the four 18 millimeter headed bolts and nuts that hold that cross member in. We have to remove I guess there's 2, 4, 6 bolts that hold, no, 8 bolts to hold this aluminum bracket in. There's this brace that is kind of in the way here. I'm wondering if I can get that bolt out without removing this brace. I'm going to give it a shot. And then we have to unbolt the diff. 3 bolts up here. And drop the front diff. Those ones look like fun up there. Yeah, there's one right there. And one in front. That's going to be interesting. Well, let's get started. So I did have to take that bracket out. There's 3 18 millimeter bolts up top here and 2 15 millimeter bolts. These are the heads of the bolts that I'm describing on the bell housing, and then you can get at that bolt. Now there's 2 bolts up here that hold the diff housing up. Look like they're 18 mil. Wow, that one's not bad, but the other one in front doesn't look too promising. Oh well. Well, there's the front diff lowered. Those 4 bolts, the 2 on top on the left and the 2 on top on the right, were a bitch. You can get 1 bolt through here with the universal joint, but it was tight all the way out to the very last thread. These 2 here were really bad. One I was able to get with an impact gun over top of the steering gear from the front, but this back one here I had to go in and out with it for like a half an hour to get it out. I'm going to run a thread chaser through there in case the threads are galled. So now we're ready to drop the pan bolts. There's the 2 wiring harness clips on this side, and on this side the transmission cooler lines attached there. Wow. So the pan does come out of there by dropping just the diff. I found if you tie wrap the tranny cooler lines towards the right motor mount right here, it's going to make it easier to go back in. Now we have to take this oil pump pickup and windage tray off because the gasket is part of the windage tray. And that's for tomorrow. We're going to call it a night. It is kind of snug. Pull the dipstick out as well. So remove 1 13 mil nut and 1 13 mil bolt and the oil pump pickup and then the windage tray. It was stuck on the block pretty good. You can see in the front corners there's some RTV sealant that goes where the timing cover attaches to the block. So I'm going to clean up this surface and then we're going to start the reassembly process. Oh, before I do put the pan on, I'm going to run a thread chaser through those bolt holes up there in the motor mounts. These ones can I run through from the back side here. So there's the gasket set, and it comes with a new O-ring for the oil pump pickup and 4 of these little retaining to hold the gasket in place. You can't put the front ones in because the pan won't drop low enough to get in, so it's just going to put the back ones in. And put some RTV sealant in this area here and here and back here as well because of the rear main cap and the timing cover joint. It tends to migrate across there. I've got the O-ring. I'm going to put that on the filler pipe, or the pickup tube I mean, And we're going to reassemble this thing. So there's the windage tray and the oil pump pickup installed. If you put a little 6mm bolt in the front of the gasket to hold it up there temporarily until the oil pump pickup is installed. Tuck the harnesses up out of the way. Now we're ready to put the pan on. Like I said, these studs here, if you put them in the front, the pan won't go down low enough to clear them. If the steering gear was out of the way, maybe, but no problem. So there's the pan reinstalled. I had to replace a couple of bolts because the heads of the bolts were no longer 10mm. Run a thread chaser through these 3 bosses in the front diff. And I already ran a thread chaser through the motor mount bolts from this side on the back. And when the oil pan was off, I had lots of room. So we're going to raise the front diff now and put it in place. So if you put one of the right side bolts in from the back, because it's easy to do, and you can use it as a stud to hang the right side of the diff and then manipulate the left side into place, you can get this bolt with a long extension and a quality flex socket. Make sure the bolts are started before you tighten them up and don't cross thread them in that cast. So there's everything reinstalled except the cross member. Just a hint, before you put this differential back in, completely tighten everything up. Make sure these 3 bolts thread in. Like I said, run a thread chaser into the aluminum housing. Make sure those 3 bolts thread in and thread them into the bracket, because there's enough movement on the motor mounts and stuff that you could end up with it out of alignment, and it's easy to cross thread those bolts in the aluminum. Start all these bracket bolts before you tighten any one of them. Same with this brace. Start them all. Wiring harness clip back on. Tranny cooler lines clip back on. I sprayed some fluid film on the rusty lines. They're not that bad, but they got some surface rust on them, so I thought I'd spray them to slow down the rust. I'm going to change the oil filter and put oil in it. Just put the cross member back on. Well, I was going to put this thing in clear flood mode after filling the oil and changing the filter and watch the oil pressure gauge, but there isn't one. So I'm going to reset the oil life monitor. 3 pumps on the gas pedal. That should reset the oil life monitor. Oh wait, maybe I got vehicle info. Let me see, maybe I can get an oil pressure gauge up here. Trans temperature, oil pressure. How can we have 20 kilopascals? Got to pedal to the floor. Maybe the data isn't live until it's running. Oh no, there goes the oil pressure. Okay, I'll take my foot off the gas. I just didn't want to fire it up with no oil pressure. Well, we'll check the oil level now. So I told him about this CV shaft. Both the inner shaft and the CV joint are worn out. Eventually that's going to strip and no longer drive, but this extension housing has to come off to do that shaft, and the knuckle has to be disconnected to get the CV shaft out. I also noticed the transfer case is low on oil. Rear shaft seal is leaking a little bit. Well, we'll top it up for now. Who knows how long it's been since it was actually checked. Anyways, One other thing I noticed is the radiator cooling fans are disconnected for some reason. I'll have to ask them why that is. Now this has a viscous clutch fan, but the rad cooling fan connector I noticed up there was not plugged in, and it didn't just fall apart because that one's a double lock on it. So it took a quart to fill it. Holds about 2 quarts. I noticed the exhaust flange clamp was rusted off as well. It was dangling down here on the pipe, so I put a new clamp on there. I'm going to tell them about this output shaft seal and this extension housing shaft and CV shaft. So this is the connector that I noticed was unplugged, and I plugged it in, started the vehicle, and I'm running it. I notice there's no drive plate on the front of the compressor. So obviously the compressor is not going to work. And I wonder if they just unplugged the cooling fans. It's funny that didn't generate any fault codes, but it's not monitored, I guess. So I'll ask them about it. I'm not sure if the fan's running now. I think it is on AC. I'll turn the AC off. Okay, I'm turning the AC off. Oh, the AC indicator light on the dash flashes. Maybe I got it in defrost. Yeah, I do. You can't turn off the AC in defrost. Well, I'm gonna ask him about that. I'm gonna check the tranny fluid level. The electric cooling fans are primarily for the AC system, but also work in stop and go city traffic. Well, I just took the vehicle for a road test. Everything works good. Shifts fine. I put 2 quarts of transmission fluid in it as well. It was below the bottom of the dipstick. Now it came in originally because he couldn't take the key out of the ignition. It's very important that the shifter, even though it's indicating in park, it's got to be pushed towards the steering, towards the dash. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the key out of the ignition. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so it shows park, and now if you try to put it in park, it still won't turn off. You have to turn it back on, and then you can turn it off. That's what he brought it in for, was a key not coming out of the ignition switch. And we found a problem with the ABS, and we found the engine oil pan leaking, and on. Made a career out of this truck. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching.